Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Tyrone back with Tech Life. And yesterday, I completed my trip to Dallas, and it was very eye-opening. So I wanted to give you guys my takeaways from the trip, give you a little review. Might be a little longer video, so make sure you guys grab your drinks, popcorn, whatever you like. This is, of course, my personal experience. This is anecdotal. This is nothing scientific. What I have pulled up here is the root metrics map. That is what many consider to be the gold standard. They have the most comprehensive scientific testing that you can do for a possible cell phone carrier. Now, I had AT&T with me and T-Mobile with me. I wasn't able to get Verizon on the trip, but I'll make sure next year when I take the same trip, I will have Verizon with me. So again, a week ago, I traveled along I-10 and I-20, and I told you guys that T-Mobile now is very competitive along that stretch. If not, in some cases, it even rivals the competition if you consider AT&T to be the best carrier in the state of Texas, which many will tell you that that should be the case. They are the most, in terms of market share in the big Texas PEAs, they are usually, in most of them, the leading market share, if not the second leading market share. And that goes for the surrounding areas as well, not just the Dallas and Fort Worth area, but let's say Wichita Falls that you see on this map, Abilene. I mean, AT&T has like 72% market share in Abilene. So they are, in these parts, the most favored carrier. So, yeah, like I said, if you consider them to be the best in Texas, then I can confidently say that T-Mobile rivals and competes against AT&T in its coverage, at least along the I-10 and in the stretch of I-20. Now, if you go north and south of those interstate, that interstate, it does change. It really does. And I try to cross-reference on Cell Mapper, like if I would have went north from Abilene or south, AT&T overall would have still been better. And that's kind of the case here. If you look at Dallas, the Metroplex, the urban core of Dallas, T-Mobile competes. And I'm going to tell you guys here a little later in this video, it's, they took AT&T for a spin. But if you look at the overall map, Wichita, Sherman, just the surrounding areas, AT&T is still the better carrier overall. But it does look like T-Mobile is trying to close that gap as well. So if you've seen some of the videos that I posted, they were very short. None of them had audio. It was, copyright issues. Yeah, I could have did voiceovers, but I just wanted to get you guys the videos up quickly so you could just get an idea of the performance. Now, I didn't have a millimeter wave device with me for AT&T, but they did have millimeter wave at the Cowboy Stadium. I saw it, and at the Maverick Stadium as well. So, just take that into consideration from the performance that you saw, and then, it likely would have been better. Probably would have pulled 600, 700, 800 megabits a second on that millimeter wave, maybe even more for AT&T. But nonetheless, they had solid performance, and so did T-Mobile. Inside the Maverick Stadium arena, they got by. There was no DAS system for T-Mobile at all. They had one bar, maybe two of LTE, but it got by. I was able to send text messages and make some calls and upload a video. I actually uploaded one of the YouTube videos on the T-Mobile connection. So I was able to get by, but AT&T just inside the Mavericks American Airlines Center, they're more consistent all day long. They have DAS systems in all the sections, so they are more consistent. And the game was packed. It wasn't sold out to the very top. So if it was like super sold out, all the seats, I think T-Mobile would have struggled even more. It probably would have really became unusable. And AT&T would have likely slowed down a bit significantly, but I think they would have still maintained 10, 20, 30 megabits a second on the IDAS. So overall, just talking about Dallas, I just mentioned overall around surrounding areas, smaller areas, I think AT&T still performs better. But I think overall, now that, we're 2 years in on the merger and T-Mobile is starting to get that that N41 out there at scale, they took AT&T for a spin out there. They did. Oh, sorry about that. They took AT&T for a spin, and it wasn't even close in certain parts. Now, don't get me wrong, AT&T had strong pockets of performance. They did. But I'm being told, I spoke with a few people, so I've seen the first tranche, the internal map of the first tranche of C-band deployments for AT&T. It looks like they're able to aggressively get that done. So I was in Arlington, I was in Grapevine, Irving, and I saw a lot of C-band on sites for AT&T, a lot. So it looks like all the jobs that were issued, AT&T is going to be able to get a lot of C-band out there when they are able to turn it on and actually have it on air once that FAA issue gets resolved. And I think at that time, a lot is going to change for AT&T. There's adequate backhaul. They have a lot of offloading C-RAN, more on the way for the small cells. But I'm being told now, it looks like for AT&T, it's more of a catch-up. They're trying to catch up to the congestion. And they should have had way more small cells deployed starting in 2019 from what I'm being told. But that's the year where even Verizon surpassed them in terms of overall performance. And so it kind of stands right now in terms of the performance. If you go by route and you you look at it, it's T-Mobile, then Verizon, and then it's AT&T. So AT&T has a lot of making up to do, a lot of money to invest. It's in the works. I saw a lot of C-RAN being installed. I saw some C-band in progress around the Cowboy Stadium. So there's a lot of money being invested for AT&T, trust me. But if you ask me today, if I was going to Dallas next weekend and you told me I could only choose one carrier today, as of the making of this video, it would have to be T-Mobile. AT&T was just jam-packed. I mean, you could just tell how the speed tests were dragging along. I mean, that is the 6th largest PEA in the United States. The largest PEA in the state of Texas, 6.7 million people overall. And AT&T has I think like 52% market share last I checked. So, I mean, the pipes were clogged. And C-band is the relief, but right now, man, they need so much more small cells. I went to the Galleria. AT&T couldn't even pull a megabit. T-Mobile, they were doing 200, 300, 400 megabits a second inside on all levels. There were a couple of stores deep inside where it did drop to low band, but T-Mobile really took AT&T for a spin inside that mall. I went to the Mills Mall in Grapevine. AT&T couldn't even pull 2 megabits a second. Surprisingly, inside T-Mobile was 5 bars of LTE. They were doing 40, 50 megabits a second. I don't know if they had a DAS system indoors or an outdoor DAS. There was something there, but it was quite strong, and they had solid performance inside that mall. And I'm telling you right now, just comparing it to the city that I live in, that mall everybody was elbow to elbow in there. It was packed. And then I went to the Park Mall across the street where I was staying at in Arlington. Same scenario there. AT&T had a C-RAN On the very opposite side, there was macros all over, and still they couldn't even pull 10 megabits a second for most of the time there. So, and that's another thing I wanted to briefly bring up. The density there for AT&T is very good. Comparing it to my market, night and day. They have way more towers out there in C-band compared to here. And their site spacing is relatively close and tight. But what I did notice comparing it to a market like Phoenix or El Paso, they don't really have a lot of spectrum channels out there. I was connected to band 66, 10 megahertz, band 2, 10 megahertz, and then band 14, 10 megahertz. They didn't have 5, 6, 7 carriers of LTE out that way. So they need, I mean, they needed C-band 2 years ago in that market. I was traveling around the airport, the DFW airport. Man, I mean, they are congested. Now, I did have some, like I said, some pockets where I was doing 200, 300. I mean, outside of the Cowboy Stadium in the parking lot, AT&T is cooking. They have a C-RAN for every single parking section, and it's cooking 400, 500 megabits a second. As you saw in the video that I made in the parking lot, it was empty, but the day of the event that we went to, there were more people there, and it was still making, good on 400 or 500 megabits a second. I do assume that during an actual Cowboys home game, those speeds are a lot harder to come by, but I still think it's it's a usable experience, especially with all the C-RAN that they have deployed for offloading. So a lot of work to do to end the video, a lot of work to do for AT&T in Dallas. A lot. Way more work to do in the near future for AT&T. But I also see a lot of work for T-Mobile. Now, it looks like they have N41 at scale there. I mean, I saw it everywhere. I saw millimeter wave 2, as a matter of fact, downtown Dallas as well for T-Mobile. Now, T-Mobile has work to do in the surrounding areas like the Jackson, where you kind of see the red and the yellow. They got some work to do there to get to matching the performance overall of AT&T in the surrounding areas of Dallas. But if you live in the main core, Fort Worth, Denton, Frisco, Plano, I mean, I think T-Mobile's a go. I think they really are. The data is starting to show it, and they're not done. We're heading into year 3 of them deploying the N41. At some point, we're going to get some kind of backhaul increase. They'll just get faster. And then they'll start transitioning over to small cells where needed. More millimeter wave where it makes sense, as they say. And then, we'll see if they expand coverage further. But just to show you really quickly, I'm going to show you Verizon. And as you see, Verizon is strong second behind T-Mobile. Much better than AT&T. And Verizon is working that market too. I saw a lot of C-band and CBRS combos for Verizon in that market. Not as many macros, not as many towers. I do got to point that out. Their market share there is not as strong, but they're looking to grow. And I saw a lot of their 5G home internet advertising on the billboards there. So they're looking to compete in that market. Not as aggressive yet. I predict that to change once C-band is on air. And they had a lot of that deployed there. And even in the surrounding areas like Weatherford that you see there on the way to Fort Worth, driving into Arlington, they had C-band deployed there. Same with AT&T as well. So they're hitting the smaller cities too. And I saw Dish, just to throw that in there. I saw Dish in Weatherford. I saw Dish in Fort Worth. I saw Dish in Arlington. I saw them in Grapevine. I saw them in Dallas. And I saw them in Irving too. So they're deploying as well. They don't have as many sites, of course, as the top 3, but they're deploying as well. So I just wanted to make this a video to start off the week. I've been busy, so let me get back into the swing of things. But like I said, if you asked me today, if I had to go to Dallas next week and only have one carrier with me for now, it would have to be T-Mobile until they can get the C-band on air and correct, some of the congestion. And then at the malls, I mean, they were bad at the malls, and that's likely because it's just jam packed. All the people there had AT&T at the stadiums, at the games where I was at. All I saw was AT&T on the top of the phone. So there's a lot of users in that area. So let me know what you think about this in the comment section down below. Let me know if you've been in Dallas. Let me know your experience with the carriers. Look forward to reading them. Thanks again for watching. This is Tyrone with Tech Life. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.